I wasn't a believer in ghosts. I didn't buy into all those spooky stories people love to tell around campfires. I was the kind of person who preferred logical explanations, who'd always find a scientific reason for anything strange. But that was before I moved to the small town of Greendale. It was a quiet, almost forgotten place, nestled in the hills and surrounded by thick, dense forests. My family moved there in the spring of 2010. My dad had taken a new job as the town's handyman, and the small house we rented was tucked on the edge of the forest, right where the trees began to close in. It had character, and that's about all it had. When we first arrived, everything seemed peaceful. The air was fresh, the birds chirped, and the neighbors were friendly. But as the days passed, something about the house started to feel off. It wasn't the house itself. No, the creaky floors, the uneven windows, and the musty smell were all things I could tolerate. What bothered me was the forest. The woods behind our house were unlike anything I'd ever seen. The trees were so thick that they blocked out most of the sunlight, and the underbrush was so dense that you couldn't see more than a few feet into it. The whole place just felt heavy. The air was thick, as if something was pressing down on it, suffocating it. It wasn't a normal forest. It was alive, but in a way that felt wrong. I remember the first time I went into those woods. I was alone, just looking for a place to clear my head. I had heard some of the other kids at school mention how the woods were haunted, how people used to go in and never come out, but I just laughed it off. Who doesn't like a good ghost story, right? I didn't get far before the feeling hit me. It wasn't just an eerie quiet like I'd expected. It was a heavy silence, as if all sound had been sucked from the air. No birds, no wind, nothing. The trees felt too close, like they were watching me, waiting for me to move. Every step I took seemed to echo, even though I was walking on soft earth. Then came the whispers. At first, I thought it was the wind. Maybe some animals were rustling in the bushes, but the whispers didn't sound like any animal I'd heard before. They were faint, too soft to understand, but constant, like a chorus of voices. I stopped, trying to locate where they were coming from, but I couldn't pinpoint any direction. They were everywhere. I felt my heart race. My breath quickened, but I still tried to tell myself it was nothing. I was just being paranoid. So I started walking again, ignoring the whispers, pushing forward. But they only grew louder. I turned around, half expecting someone to be behind me, but no one was there. I felt something cold run down my spine, and that's when I saw it. Just off the path, between two thick oaks, there was something standing. It was tall, impossibly tall, and cloaked in shadow. I couldn't make out details, just the outline of a figure. The whispers seemed to come from it. No, they came through it, as if the figure itself was somehow made of the voices. I froze. My body refused to move, and my heart hammered in my chest. It took a step forward. I didn't know what to do. My legs were trembling, and all I wanted was to run. But I couldn't tear my eyes away from it. The figure's shadow seemed to stretch out toward me, and the whispers became clearer, more distinct. They weren't just whispers anymore. They were words. Get out. Leave now. It will never let you go. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in terror, but I eventually snapped out of it. The figure was still there, but it hadn't moved. I turned and bolted, running as fast as I could through the thick trees, not daring to look back. The whispers followed me, taunting me, urging me to stop, but I didn't. I made it back to the house, and I slammed the door shut behind me, my breath ragged, my heart in my throat. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the figure in my mind. I kept hearing the whispers, even though I was inside, safe from the woods. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination, that I was overreacting. But something deep down told me it was real, that something was out there watching me. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that the forest was calling to me, waiting for me to come back. I couldn't leave the house without feeling those eyes on me. It didn't help that I kept hearing those same whispers, even during the day, when the wind wasn't blowing and no one was around. It was as if the forest was alive, always watching, always listening. Then, one evening, I heard something that made my blood run cold. I was standing at the kitchen sink, looking out the window toward the forest, when I heard someone whisper my name. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't my mind playing tricks. It was a clear, distinct voice. My name, softly, from the edge of the woods. I didn't go to the window. I couldn't bring myself to look. But I did hear footsteps, slow, deliberate steps, coming closer to the house. The whispers followed, this time clearer than ever. And they weren't just whispers anymore. They were words, calling me out by name, coaxing me to come into the woods. Come back to us. We've been waiting for you. I grabbed my phone and tried to call my parents, but the line was dead. The house went silent, and the whispers seemed to rise, filling the air around me. Every wall, every corner seemed to echo with them. My pulse quickened as the footsteps grew louder, closer, like someone or something was at the door. That was the moment I realized I had to leave. The house, the woods, the whispers. It was all connected. I wasn't just haunted by something in the forest. I was being hunted by whatever that thing was. I left that night, driving as far as I could. We never went back to Greendale. I don't know what lives in those woods or why it chose me, but I know this. There are things in this world that can't be explained, and sometimes it's better not to ask. I don't think I'll ever fully understand what happened that summer, but I do know one thing for sure. Some places, some things, are meant to be left alone, and the Whispering Woods will always be one of them.